Hey guys, what is going on? Hey, I wanted to come back to you this afternoon and bring you a video or a couple of clips from a video that I watched earlier. And it's a panel of men, and they're talking about what it means to be a modern man versus what a more traditional man is. And again, I agree with a couple of guys for the most part. But majority of these guys, man, they bought hook, line, and sinker into this new idea of what it means to be a man. This new woke ideology of what it means to be a man. But anyways, guys, if you would, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Thanks.
To start, maybe we could just introduce each other to each other, and if you were to describe what it means to be a man or to be masculine.
My name is Tahoe. I'm a black man from the hood. When I was young, being a man, you had to be tough. You had to be hard. And now, to me, being a man is a lot different. Now, to me, being a man is knowing when to be soft. Knowing that you don't always have to run the charge. You can actually listen. You know what I mean? So things have changed a lot over the course of the years for me.
I'm Griffin, and I don't identify as a man. I'm non-binary. I still have elements of, my identity that are masculine, elements that are feminine, elements that don't fall within that range. And I personally just don't feel tied to the norms or the confines of gender at all.
Well, welcome.
My name is Dylan, and
Number one, man, if this is a panel about masculinity and you don't identify as being a man, why are you there? I understand that you're still biologically a man, and I get that. But if you don't identify as being a man and you wear a dress, why are you there? Again, I'm not being rude, but if you don't identify as such, what are you doing there? I don't know.
It's hard to admit that you're a victim.
Yeah, for sure.
And to complain about it. People look at you like, remember Terry Crews? You didn't get his nuts squeezed and shit?
Right.
It's like, why didn't you do something? Why'd you let him?
Look how the world ridiculed him. You ain't do nothing. Like, oh, you a bitch. So we as men, especially super guys that grew up in super masculine houses, we don't really like to admit weakness.
Well, and it's in our language, right? Like, don't be a bitch. Like, don't be a pussy.
Right.
Like, it's very real.
We internalize that.
Yeah, that's all examples of toxic masculinity. It's never to invalidate somebody's experience, but it must be obvious that these are rules and roles enforced by men and created by men.
well, in toxic masculinity.
So those are roles made by men and enforced by men. No, I think there's a lot of women that also, they don't like weak men. They don't want a victim. They don't want a weak man. They don't want a weak man. They don't want to sleep with a weak man. So men look at that and say, I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to be a bitch or whatever. I don't want to be that. Because that's not going to make me as marketable to women as well. Guys don't like that. But he's saying, or she or whatever, the dress, the person in the dress, saying that it was made, those rules were made by men and enforced by men. Not really. Women don't want weak men. And you can say, well, no, that's not true. Yeah, it's true. Women don't want weak men. I'm not saying you can't be a victim. But there's a degree, man. If you're this whiny little person that always is complaining about something and you are seen as a victim of other people, how are you a protector? How are you a protector of a house? And so I see, men, again, they want to look as good as they can to women. Women, they wear makeup. Men want to look good in other ways, man. I mean, they want to look good physically, but they want to look good in other ways. They want to look as a good provider. As somebody strong and can take care of things if they need to. But not somebody who's a victim of the people. Because again, that's not what women look for in mates. And you can argue about that and say, well, no, that's not true. But it is true. Again, even men, they look for, okay, here, I'm going to hire security for my company. Do I want a little weak man who's constantly talking about how people are victimizing him? Probably not. So I think women also look at that as, no, that's not a desirable trait they look for in a husband and a father of kids. So, I mean, again, man, it's, that's just, again, the way I see things. And yeah, it's so easy to say the patriarchy. It's part of the patriarchy. But, I mean, again, that is a very BS term. It doesn't mean anything. Again, it's just a label you want to put on something because you want to blame somebody else, other groups for, you want to blame men for the ills of the world. And that's not the case.
Can you define toxic masculinity? Like,
I would say toxic masculinity is like what he was just saying, where you're using that leadership role or that aggressive nature in a harmful way to harm other people, to get your way. So the biblical structure for manhood is very humble. It's self-sacrifice. It's not self-motivated, but it is motivated by principle and standing on what's right. So there is a clear-cut vision for manhood in the Bible that I live by, and I think our culture used to live by, and I think our culture has lost its way.
I think everybody sort of has a different definition of toxic masculinity. I don't find masculinity toxic in and of itself, but I do believe in bad men, and bad men exist. But does that mean every man is toxically masculine? No.
We were talking about a crisis on masculinity. I think that there's a lack of understanding there. So it's like masculinity, being masculine isn't toxic. It's just like there are portions of it that you can dive into that make it toxic.
Because I think a lot of what we think of masculinity is tied into patriarchy, right? Which is to say, like, for the longest period of human history, like, men dominated women and got the lion's share of stuff.
I think a lot of times some people...
Yeah, as far as men getting the lion's share of stuff, man, I think that's really kind of just a one-sided approach to or viewing of what men got. Because again, throughout history, who are the ones that go out and hunt? Who are the ones that put their life at risk? If there's a conflict, or if somebody needs to be protected, or, things need to be fixed, or things need to be... Normally, it's the man. It's the man that kind of puts himself out there as a sacrifice in a way for his family. And so I think people overlook that quite a bit. We have what we have, like the inventions, whatever, because of men sacrificing themselves for that, for doing that, for creating that. A certain degree of sacrifice went into that. So I think it's easy to say that men had all the advantages and all the stuff and all the whatever, and not looking at also the fact of what they had to give up to provide that, to get that. So, I think, again, man, the patriarchy is kind of a BS kind of statement, I think. to say that we lived under a patriarchy. I don't think so. I think majority of men, man, honestly, man, they're led around by women to a large extent. You know, they want to look good for women. They want to provide for women. They want to provide for their families. They want to do what they have to do to make themselves more attractive for females. And I think people overlook that fact. They overlook the fact that, yeah, pretty much majority of what a lot of guys do is to look good for women. And again, I think that's the wrong approach in a lot of ways, but I think there is an element of that. And there's an element, man, again, the self-sacrificing element that men give, you know, I think it's looked down upon. And so people assume, okay, we live in a patriarchy because men have it all. But again, if men had to have responsibility over something, if you want them to be responsible for something, they got to have a certain degree of authority over it. Because one without the other wouldn't make sense. You can't say to men, hey, you're responsible for the house. You're responsible for the well-being of your wife and your kids. But you have no authority over it. So, you know, they can go and they can do this, they can do that, they can whatever. No, I mean, if you have a certain degree of responsibility over the house, making sure things are right, you got to have a certain degree of authority over it. You know, kind of like cops have a certain degree of authority over their jurisdiction. You know, I mean, again, you got to have that. If you don't, to a certain degree, things don't work.
You son of a.